1965. In January, Reverend Pixley makes known that he will be leaving for another calling in the Roscommon area. He would stay until after the Lenten services had finished in March. Also in January, Lyndon B. Johnson is elected the 36th President of the U.S. President Johnson appoints Thurgood Marshall as the first African American as a Supreme Court Justice. In February, Malcolm X, a black civil rights leader, is assassinated by 3 members of the Nation of Islam at a speaking engagement. The U.S. Pentagon leaders authorize bombing raids on North Vietnam, and in March starts the first deployment of U.S. troops to South Vietnam. In April, Sir Winston Churchill of Great Britain dies. In Michigan news, the Petoskey Stone is adopted as the official state stone. The state also instituted photos on driver's licenses, and the slogan on license plates is changed to Water Winter Wonderland. In August, FBC announces it has a new pastor, Reverend Grant Fanger from Elgin, Illinois. Later in the fall, many churches in town are upset with the state legislature ending baccalaureate programs for high school graduates in Michigan public schools. The South Haven Board of Education is swamped with mail and citizens wanting to keep the practice. But in December, the board decides to uphold the state's decision, even with the displeasures of the community. 1966. In the spring, FBC continues with the participation of Lenten and Good Friday services, and in June had a mother-daughter banquet with a fashion show of What's in Grandma's Trunk. A baccalaureate service, now sponsored by the South Haven Ministerial Association, takes place with Reverend Fanger giving the message, "Where is God?" In Michigan news, the last operational mine in the Upper Peninsula, Gojabik Iron Range, closes. In national news, in June, the Supreme Court decides on Miranda versus Arizona. The law cannot use responses from a police interrogation unless the person was informed of their rights against self-incrimination, hence the beginning of the term Miranda rights. The 3 major television networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC, now have full-color lineups in their primetime schedules. Back home at FBC, a new emphasis is being placed on healing services. There would be one several times during the year. In December, FBC joins with the First Congregational Church to hold a Faith and Life Conference. And after needed repairs were completed to the FBC pipe organ, a rededication service was held. A week later, a Christmas candlelight service is held. 1967. January would bring the first National Football League Super Bowl. The Green Bay Packers would defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 35-0. On January 27th, our nation mourned the death of 3 Apollo astronauts, Colonel Vigil Grissom, Colonel Edward White II, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee, who died when a flash fire swept through the Apollo 1 command module during a simulated launch. In South Haven, as winter receded, annual plans of Lenten and Good Friday services take place. In June, FBC honors graduates by handing out Bibles to their graduating youth as part of their Sunday service. In state news, urban unrest takes place in Detroit. Riots ensue, leaving 45 dead. Those civil unrests in over 159 cities throughout the nation became known as the Long Hot Summer of 1967. In world news, Israeli and Arab forces battle in a 6-day war. Israel occupies the Sinai Peninsula, Golden Heights, and Gaza Strip. and the east bank of the Suez Canal. China announces the explosion test of their first hydrogen bomb. On the national front, 1967 would also become known as the Summer of Love to a growing counterculture of people called hippies. Back at FBC, it became known that Pastor Fenger would be leaving for another calling to a California church in August. In September, a new pastor starts at FBC, Reverend Gordon K. Ryan. In December, the church sponsored a children's Christmas program with a surprise money tree for Reverend K. Ryan and his wife. 1968. Starting off the year with tensions, North Korea seizes a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Pueblo, and holds 83 on-board members as spies. Also in January, Reverend K. Ryan speaks to a missionary meeting supervised by FBC. Later in March, an attendance contest is held and Lenten services are planned. On the other side of the world, U.S. news outlets reveal how U.S. soldiers killed 300 Vietnamese villagers. This massacre became known as the My Lai Massacre. On April, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., while planning for a speaking event, is assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. In June, Robert F. Kennedy is assassinated in Los Angeles while seeking the Democratic nomination for a presidential run. In August, the Soviet Union invades Czechoslovakia, crushing the liberal regime while taking over control with new government-sponsored leaders. Back in Michigan, lawmakers adopt a new slogan for Michigan's license plates, "A Great Lakes State." Back home, local pastors, including Reverend K. Ryan, weigh in on the changing of state laws to allow liquor sales on Sunday. In October, the national debut of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on National Education Television takes place. In December, Apollo 8 becomes the first to leave Earth's orbit, to orbit the moon before returning to Earth. To close out the year, FBC puts on a Christmas cantata for the community. 1969, in January, FBC puts on a leadership training event where educational credits can be earned from the Evangelical Teacher Training Association of Wheaton, Illinois. In national news, Richard Nixon becomes the 37th president. Locally, the FBC youth hold a Youth for Christ program for the community. Springtime means Lenten and Good Friday services for the local church community. And in May, FBC hosts an artist evangelist with 8 evening programs that consisted of gospel storytelling and creative chalk drawings. In June, the church celebrates 99 years of history, and Reverend K. Ryan speaks at the Free Will Baptist Church as part of one of South Haven's 100-year anniversary events. Also in June, the Stonewall riots take place in Greenwich Village, New York City, which marks the start of the modern gay rights movement in the U.S. In national news, in July, Apollo 11, the U.S. successfully lands 2 men on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Later during the summer, the Woodstock Music Festival takes place on a farm in Bethel, New York. It attracted an audience of more than 400,000 people. The U.S. expands its bombing campaign in North Vietnam to include Cambodia and Laos. Sesame Street premieres on National Education Television, and in November, FBC participates in forming a Human Relations Committee to promote communications with different ethnic groups. As another decade ends, with the people of God, they try to make sense of the world around them, live out their faith and beliefs in a world that seems to be crumbling away. But onward they persevered.